What we're talking about this month is we're talking about freedom in the spirit of the 4th of July, and if you're from France, the Bastille Day. But this general idea that human consciousness is evolving towards this concept of freedom. It's as if it's in the inevitable destiny, if you will, of the human race, that we recognize somehow that freedom is our birthright, that we recognize then that we must constantly move forward to that and expand that and express that to a greater and greater degree in our life. That's what this whole idea of freedom is. And it's a spiritual concept. It is not just a political concept. It is a spiritual concept that we are born with free will. Theologians agree with this. We as human beings are free to choose and to will and to think as we would. And nothing can stop us from that. No matter where we are, no matter what the circumstances are, even in prison, we are free to choose what we would choose to believe. When I was in Denver, Denver's not too far from Cheyenne, and if Mike Keene is on the bridge, he lives up in Cheyenne. In Cheyenne, every year they have rodeo days. Now, rodeo days in Cheyenne are a celebration of the Old West, and the people come into town and they ride their horses into town, and there's a big parade of cowboys and cowgirls riding their horses into town. And they drive cattle through the streets just as they did in the old days, and then they go out to the rodeo grounds, and they have a big celebration of the rodeo to kind of honor their heritage. And when I was in Denver at the Mile High Church, the minister there told a story one Sunday of an article that he had read in the paper about the rodeo days. And there was this young man who his goal in life was he wanted to be able to ride a horse down the main street in Cheyenne during rodeo days. That was what he wanted to do. This was his dream. This was his passion. This was something that he just wanted to do. But he couldn't do it because he wasn't physically able. His body was deformed and he was in a wheelchair. And there was no way that he could mount a saddle and ride a horse. Well, a man heard this young man's dream. And he knew something about working with saddles. And he built a specially designed saddle that would hold this boy's body in place, so that they could put this saddle on a horse, and they could take this young man from his wheelchair, and they could put him in the saddle, and he would be safe. And he could fulfill his dream of riding that horse down Main Street during rodeo days in Cheyenne. And he sent the saddle, and the boy got to live out his dream. He got to ride that horse down Main Street. But the man who sent him the saddle wasn't there. He couldn't see it, because that man was serving a life sentence in prison. And I think the reason that stories like this touch our heart is that we understand that the power of love and the power to choose is not bonded and bounded by the situation. That there, even though this man was in prison and going to spend the rest of his life there, his heart was touched by the story of this boy. And he knew he could do something about it. And love was able to work its way out that even though he was in this situation of being in prison, he was able to construct that saddle and let that boy have that ride. We are free to choose. We are free to choose no matter where we are. We are free to choose no matter what the situation that we find ourselves in is. We are free. But what is the ultimate freedom? We know that when we choose, that there's a power in the universe that responds to us exactly according to our belief. All the religions teach this in one way, shape, or form. As you think and believe in your heart, so it is done unto you. We understand then that by exercising our ability and our responsibility to choose, that we are choosing what we would believe. As we change our belief, the experience in our life changes. And there is that power in the universe that seems to know how to work around seeming barriers of even being in prison, so that the love that we choose to express can be expressed through us, no matter what. But what is the greatest freedom that we have? Certainly the freedom to choose is right up there amongst the top. But I'm willing to suggest to you today that there's a greater freedom than our freedom to choose. It is the very reason that we are here. It is the very reason that we have been given the ability to choose. It is the very reason that there is a power in the universe that responds to us according to our choice. And that is love. Love is the reason. Love is where we come from. Love is where we go to. You know, as we start to grow and mature, we start to ask ourselves, who am I? Why am I here? Where am I going? We start to ask ourselves those questions. And if we look at it from a purely physical standpoint, who I am is nothing more than illusion of chemical reactions in the mind. Why am I here? Because my parents made love. Where am I going? Going to a grave. And that's it. And we tend to think of things in materialistic sense, and yet there's part of us that knows that there's something so much greater. There's something beyond that, that we continue to look for the answer, you see. We continue to know that that is not all there is. I went on the internet, and I started to look for love on the internet. No, not the dating rooms. I started to look for the definition of love. And it was interesting. One of them came back, and it said that love is an action. And when you perform the action of love, you get to experience the bliss that comes from the action of love. And if you don't do the action of love, you don't get to experience the bliss, and then you experience pain. And I said, well, isn't that interesting? Totally external view of love. Love is a chemical reaction that takes place within us, see? And who is it to say that the act that we perform is an act of love or just an act? Just something that we do, you know? That is nothing more than an idea. Two of us can do exactly the same thing. One of us can do it out of love, and one of us can do it simply because it's our job, simply because we have to. But you see, the orientation that definition was coming from was the orientation that says that the material is real, and the emotional experience is a result of the material action. And we must go beyond that, and we must ask ourselves truly, what is love? What is it? And the best definition that I have ever heard is that love is the experience of unity. When we feel love, we feel one with the person, the group, the country, situation. We experience that unity, that sense of kinship, if you will. Think about it. Think of those who you love. Don't you feel something in common with them? Don't you feel that bond? You know, even though the bond is in many cases totally arbitrary. We meet strangers and we fall in love with them, you know. Little children come into our house and we can love them. But we feel this kinship, we feel this oneness, we feel this unity. And the divine love that is the ultimate impulse of the universe is this unity of life. The greatest bliss that we can ever experience, the greatest love that we will ever experience is the experience of the unity with the presence of the divine. Oneness with God, oneness with all of God's creation, oneness with each other. I and my brother are one. You and I are one. I and the Father are one. We are one, and we are love. And there's a part of us that knows this, you see. There's a part of us that has always known this. And this is the story of the garden. This is the story of the Garden of Eden, which exists in other cultures as well. There was a time, you see, in this story, there's a time when we know that we are one. We know that we are together. We walk in the cool of the evening with God. You see, everything is wonderful and everything is provided for. And that is the origin in the human mythology. This is the place where it starts. It starts from unconditional love. It starts from unconditional unity. There was nothing that Adam and Eve lacked. You see, there was nothing that they wanted. They had it all. They were one with all. There's a part of us that knows that that's where we come from. We come from love, you see. We are an expression of that love. But we left the garden. You see, we left the garden. And in our lack of understanding, we have developed all of these superstitious stories that say, well, we left the garden because we're being punished. We left the garden because we didn't do what we were supposed to do. We left the garden because We listened to temptation and we disobeyed. But I don't believe that that's the case at all, you see. I believe that we chose to leave the garden. I believe that we chose to go out and have the experience, the possibility of things being great and the possibility of things being not so great. That we chose to go out and do this because that is how we can uniquely learn to be love. That is how we can uniquely learn to express love. In the Jewish mystical tradition of the Kabbalah, there's a story of the origin. And in that tradition, the things that take place in the Garden of Eden don't take place here on earth. They take place before. You see? And in that tradition, God being all that there is, you see, God has nothing to receive because God is all that there is. God can only give. But what and to whom would God give? God had to create something that could receive. You see? And that was the act of creation. That was the creation of the soul. That was the creation of a vessel, of you and I, who are capable of emptying ourselves in order that we might be filled again. And the divine would have the joy and the pleasure of giving of itself to us in its own unique way. But in this creation story, what happened is the vessels were too close to God. And as fast as the vessels could seemingly empty themselves out, God would fill them back up. And they never could get empty. So the vessels made a choice. And they said, you know, if we are to participate in this grand givingness of God, this self-givingness of the universe, this love of God in action, we must enter an experience of seeming separation. We must enter an experience of time and space. We must enter an experience where the illusion that we are separate can persist so that we can truly empty ourselves out and open ourselves up and allow God to fulfill itself in us, as us, and through us. And in doing so, we would become unique, wonderful expressions of God. See? And in that tradition, you see, that was leaving the garden. They weren't kicked out. They weren't put out. The souls chose to enter the experience of the seeming separation so that we could develop our uniqueness. It's inevitable then that as we go through this experience, that what we are seeking is what we had. You see, the unity that we know exists, the unity that is there, the unconditional love that is there. That's what we're looking for. That is the fulfillment that we're seeking. And we are each seeking it through our own experience, through our own growth, through our own way, and creating our uniqueness. But along the way, we make some dead-end decisions. We go down some paths to find out that love wasn't there. Fulfillment wasn't there. You know, it didn't work out exactly as we thought. And what we can do is we can beat ourselves up and we can say, I made a mistake and I am a terrible sinner. We can be like the prodigal son. But the prodigal son went back home, you see. The prodigal son knew that the love of God was back home, and the prodigal son returned home to get that love that his heart was crying out for, but he was looking for it in all the wrong places. This is our journey. This is what you and I are doing. We are finding the unique, wonderful way for us to let God's love come through us. Joseph Campbell, in his study of mythology, he's got many, many works. One of them is called the Hero with 1,000 Faces, where he looks at the hero's journey through all different cultures and all different mythologies, and he finds this common theme. And the common theme is that the hero is kind of an ordinary person, And this ordinary person one day decides that there is something that needs to be known, something that needs to be done, something that needs to be expressed right there in the hero's hometown, in the hero's village. And the hero decides that he or she will be the person who will find the answer to this problem, will find the solution, will find out how to fulfill that need and bring that information back to the community. Now, the information is always someplace else, right? And Campbell tells us there's always a soothsayer or a guide or somebody who says, oh, this is going to be a tough journey. Are you sure you really want to do this? Are you sure you want to face the trials and the tribulations and do all of the things that need to be done in order for you to be the one through whom this answer comes? And of course the hero always says yes. Wouldn't be a great story if the hero said, well, you're right. I think I'm going to go back home and sleep. But the hero goes off, you see, and the hero meets all of these trials and all of these tribulations, and along the way, serendipity, somebody will arrive and will tell the hero, you need to do this, or you need to do that, or you need to go here, or you need to not go there. And whatever information the hero needs along the way, the hero gets, and the hero grows with each trial, with each test, if you will, with each struggle that they go through, he or she becomes a better person. And eventually, they get the prize. They get the information that they were looking for, and they return back home. But the interesting thing is that what they find is that they had it before they left. They just didn't know it. The answer they were seeking was right there, but they just didn't know it. And this journey that they went on was not a journey so much to a far-off place, to a distant land, as much as it was a journey of meeting within themselves those things that they needed to work through so that they could awaken to the fact that they had it all along. And when they awakened to that fact, then they were able to share it. Then they were able to give it. You look at stories through mythology, and you will see it over and over and over again. Probably one of the best known in our culture is a retelling of an ancient tale, and James Crowell wrote the book Acres of Diamonds, about the man who goes off, sells everything he has, and goes off all over the world searching for diamonds. And when he gets back home, he finds out that the piece of land he sold was full of diamonds. You see? The point is that you and I are seeking that which we know spiritually exists. See, we are told that you must discern spiritual things in a spiritual manner. You cannot know spiritual things in a physical manner. You can't take love and say love is a chemical based on what you have done. That is a physical approach. We must take the spiritual approach. We must say love is the causative energy of the universe. Love is the very essence of the realization of the unity of life, the oneness with God, the oneness with each other. Our souls are one soul, you see. I am not my brother's keeper. I am my brother. We are one. That love exists, and we are simply on the hero's journey, you and I, of discovering that, of awakening to that, of coming unto our own like the prodigal, of saying, wait a second, there's something better here. There's something more wonderful here. There is something to be shared here. And then we can return to the garden to find that we have never left other than in our own mind. We are told in the story of the garden in Jewish tradition that the two cherubim were placed at the gate of the garden to keep people from getting back in to discover the tree of life, you see. And Joseph Campbell tells us in Buddhism you'll see the same symbolism of the two guards at the gate. But you see in the Buddhist symbolism the Buddha sitting between the two guards with a serene look on his face and his hand held up kind of like a crossing guard saying, stop, halt. And what that is the instruction to us to be not deceived. Don't pay any attention to these two guards that are here frightening you because they are They are your own fear, and they are your own desires. That's what keeps us out of the garden. In our desires, we think that there is something out there that can fulfill us, and yet we are created to seek fulfillment, you see? Where do we come from? We come from love. Why are we here? To allow love to fulfill itself through us. Where are we going? To a greater expression of God's love. We are born to seek that fulfillment. That is how God calls us home. This is what Augustine said. We would not even have the desire to pray if God didn't first put it in our heart. There is something within us that knows that we must seek this fulfillment. You see? And yet we get confused and we think that we will find fulfillment in persons or things. We will find it in money. We will find it in jobs. We will find it in somebody else. And our desires keep us from entering the garden because the only thing that will fulfill us is the experience of the presence of God. And once we learn that, and once we learn to let go of our desires for those things that are out there, there's nothing wrong with those things out there, by the way. Not a thing wrong with them. But if we think that they are going to fulfill us, that is wrong. That is erroneous thinking. That is what keeps us from the goal. And then we are afraid, you see. We are truly afraid to let go and go into the bliss. We are truly afraid because I believe we don't know what we would be like if we were there. We have grown so fond of, so attached to this idea of who and what we are, that I don't know that we would be quite comfortable with just knowing how to love. Remember the movie The Princess Bride? One of our favorite movies. And in the movie, there was a guy who was seeking revenge against the man who killed his father. And he kept going through, what do you say? My name is Ignacio something or other. You killed my... What's that? Inigo Montoya. My name is Inigo Montoya. You killed my father. Prepare to die. He rehearsed this his whole life. You know, that was his one goal. It was his reason for living. He was going to get revenge on this man. And finally he does at the very end. And they ask him and they say, what are you going to do now? He says, I don't know. He says, I've been in the revenge business so long. I don't know how to do anything else. You see, and I think that we find ourselves sometimes in that situation where we have been in the business of living the illusion that we are separate from one another, that we are different than the love of God, that we are physical beings and an illusion of the chemical reactions in our brain, that we are afraid to let go of that ego self to allow it to dissolve into the greater self. The bliss, the love of God. So as we go through this journey of life, we recognize then that who you and I are, we are the heroes on the journey. That hero's journey is not about somebody else who lived a long, long time ago in a faraway place. It is about you. It is about I. The prodigal son is not about some man who lived in Palestine 2,000 years ago. It is about you. It is about I living here today. The Garden of Eden is not something that happened either a very, very long time ago somewhere in the Middle East where people are still digging for it, or happened in another existence before we even came here. But the Garden of Eden is happening here today in you and I at this very moment. And it is you and I who are seeking our way back into that garden to experience the tree of life. But it was necessary along the way that we experience the fruits of good and evil, so that we could become the unique persons that we are. What we didn't know, what Bo didn't know, see, that's the Dukes of Hazzard for those of you who aren't old enough to remember. Kathy got it. What we didn't know along the way is that we were exercising our freedom to love. That's all you and I have ever been doing. At times it looks strange. If we had it over to do again, at times we would do differently. But we must remember this, that the greatest freedom that we have is the freedom to discover that we are God's love in action. Why am I here? To discover God's love, to express God's love, to experience God's love. Who am I? Who am I? A unique, wonderful expression of God's love. A little piece, if you will, of the divine spark, manifest uniquely as me. Made unique by the choices I have made, by the ways that I chose to find love. And where am I going? I'm not going anywhere. I'm right here. You see? There's no place for me to go. There's nothing else for me to do. The only thing that I can change is to consciously cooperate, to have that greater experience of God's love, to share that greater experience of God's love, to be that instrument of God's love. Every moment, every day, even while we sleep. Two people can take the same action. For one, it can be an expression of love. For the other, it can be an expression of misery. Yes? You hear people talk about going to work. Some people love their work. And some people would do anything but go to work. What's the difference? What's the difference? One sees the fulfillment and experiences the fulfillment. Remember the old story? They were building St. Paul's Cathedral in London. You may remember that. That's where Princess Diana, that's where the wedding took place. Christopher Wren was the architect, Sir Christopher Wren. And the story is that a man was walking down the street and he saw the three brick masons laying the wall. And he said to the first one, "What are you doing?" And the first one said, "What does it look like I'm doing? I am laying brick." And he said to the second one, "What are you doing?" And the second one says, "What does it look like I'm doing? I'm building a wall." And he said to the third one, "What are you doing?" And he says, "What does it look like I'm doing? I'm building a cathedral where people will come to experience the presence of God." You see? The same activity, the same action, the same mortar, the same bricks. But one had connected what he was doing to the expression of God's love. The greatest freedom that you and I have is the freedom to awaken to the fact that we are God's love in action and there is nothing else worth having. The greatest freedom that we have is the freedom to recognize that whatever it takes to get us here today, to this awakening in our consciousness today, whatever that took was okay because that was part of our uniqueness. But now we know more fully who and what we are. We know more fully what our purpose in life is. We know more fully what the greatest freedom is that we must experience. And we can dedicate our lives from this moment forward to making every decision that we make a decision that is rooted in the freedom to love. To love. We are not here to judge one another. We're here to love one another. We heard that someplace a long time ago, right? Judge not one another, but love one another. Yeah. Very simple advice. Very simple advice. All we have to do is do it. And I think up until now, the reason that humankind could not do it is they were locked into this idea that the spiritual experience is an illusion of the physical, rather than the other way around. So I invite everyone then, as we go forward the rest of this week, the rest of this month, the rest of our lives here on this planet, I invite everyone to stop at every moment of what you're doing, and ask yourself, how is what I am doing right here and right now an expression of God's love? Can you see how being here today, how participating in these ideas is an expression of God's love, because it helps to release each of us further to express God's good. And that is good. You see, that is love, and that is wonderful. Can we see when we go out into the community to raise our children, to do our work, to volunteer wherever we volunteer? Can we see that that is an expression of God's love in action, and that is good? And if we find anything in our lives that we can look at it and say, I don't understand how that is a greater expression of God's love, can we roll it up and cast it aside and let it be with the things gone by, because it no longer serves us? The greatest lesson I believe that we can ever learn is that love is all that there is. That love includes us. It could not exclude us. It could not punish us. It could not hate us. It can only love us enough to let us go forward and have whatever experiences we need to have, so that we may find our unique, wonderful way of letting that love come through us. That's exactly what has happened. And once we recognize that, you see, it becomes easier to let go of desire and to let go of fear, because they have no place in our life. God doesn't need anything from outside of itself to fulfill itself, and neither do you and I. God is not afraid of anything, because God is one with everything, and so are you and I. It's very simple. It's not hard to explain. Sometimes it's hard to do. But the secret of fulfillment, the secret of happiness, the secret of life is very simply this. Don't ever forget that you are God's love in action. And the freedom of choice and the freedom of will that you have been given is the freedom to decide how you will love. Love is not an action that you do that creates a feeling of bliss that makes you feel good until you stop doing it. Love is the creative impulse of the universe. Love is the reason for being. Love is the self-givingness of God through the creative process, which is through you and I, so that it might fulfill itself. Surrender to it. Be willing to be made a fool of for love, as St. Paul would say. Give yourself over to it. And let the love of God enjoy itself as this wonderful, unique starting place of love. That is you. The freedom to choose it or not is yours. But I think I know why we're here. I think I know where we as spiritual community are going. I think I see that love of God that pulled you in and that pushes you forward, that cares for you more than you know. I see it right here, right now, and I know how the story ends. And it's a good one. And so it is. Let's take this from our heads to our hearts, and we release every and any idea that there's anything in this universe, in the multiverse, anything other than God. God is one. It is whole. It is perfect. It is complete. It is harmony. It is peace. And that wholeness, that oneness, that unity is what we call love. And to the degree that we experience that unity, we say that we are experiencing love. We recognize then that love is our reason for being. Love has created us out of itself to express itself. And love's success through us was guaranteed before the journey ever started. You and I signed up for the trip. We volunteered to go forward. We volunteered to step out of the garden, to empty ourselves out temporarily that we might enjoy and God might enjoy the experience of refilling itself as us and through us, and providing a unique and wonderful starting place for the self-givingness of Spirit as us. We recognize ourselves today as spiritual beings. We release and we let go of every and any idea that says we are simply physical. We accept the fullness of what this means. We accept our responsibility to choose love. And we do so at every opportunity. And because we have done so, the love of God is expressed to a greater and greater degree in this plane of existence at this time. It is through us that peace is more prevalent. It is through us that kindness is more prevalent. It is through us that harmony is more prevalent. It is through us that love is made visible. And we are so grateful to know this. We know that there's a power in the universe that responds to us according to our belief. When we say yes, it shouts yes. It can never refuse, and why would it? Because today we are declaring that very purpose for which it has created us. It has no reason to say no, even if it could, which it can't. So knowing that the power that created us out of itself to awaken to our role as its instruments of love has been waiting for us to say yes. Knowing that it knows how to do everything that needs to be done, knowing that it is powerful enough to do everything that needs to be done, and knowing that there is no other power to get in its way, we recognize this is done. We are so certain of this that we say together, and so it is.